All right, folks, let's get into the prophet Habakkuk. This Father Larry Young here for my introduction to the Old Testament class. And this is a wonderful prophet, okay? Name is kind of obscure, but basically it's related to the Hebrew word embrace. So it could be one who is embraced by the Lord. You know, could be the assumed meaning here, or one who embraces. Maybe he was a hugger. Maybe he was clingy. Okay, but anyway, Habakkuk, that's what it means. We don't really know what it means. It's just derived from this Hebrew word to embrace. Okay. Now, the identity of this character, Habakkuk, this prophet, is obscure as well. But it seems like, since it's kind of psalm-like, that perhaps he was a Levite singer. Okay. But anyway, it's pre-exilic, possibly around 598 BC, right before the first wave of the Babylonian conquest, okay, when that knucklehead Jehoiakim gets carted off, okay? So basically, it's long before 586, okay? That was the final conquest and destruction of the temple, was 586, but remember, there was a preliminary one. That's when Ezekiel and Daniel were carted off. Okay, so anyway, so they're alive here, presumably. They're young men. When Habakkuk is preaching here. So this is good stuff. I really like Habakkuk. Deals with the problem of evil, you know, which is like the number one reason that keeps people from making an act of faith or opening themselves up to the gift of faith. Is the problem of evil. So, you know, it's the problem of evil from the perspective of justice and faith. Whereas Hosea would be a good contrast. Hosea, in a certain sense, deals with the problem of evil, namely, you know, the harlotries of Israel, okay, her infidelity. And so the sign of God's love, like God is faithful even when we are unfaithful. So it was like kind of, there's this terrible, terrible problem of evil in Hosea that's, you know, just evil has its grip on us and we just seem to be completely unable to remain faithful in this marriage covenant with God. But God himself will always remain faithful to us, and hence he has Hosea marry that prostitute who's not faithful to him, but he refuses to divorce, and as a sign, a prophetic sign. So basically, the problem of evil is addressed in Hosea with God's fidelity, his steadfast love. It's about love. The love of God is the answer, one part of the answer to the problem of evil. But there's another answer to the problem, and it's just justice and faith. Eventually, God's going to take care of us, and he's going to bring about justice in the end. Everybody's going to get their final shake, okay? Eventually, the scales will balance. Our Lord's going to straighten out this whole mess. The final judgment should be something that consoles us deeply as Christians. Okay, so justice. There is going to be perfect justice in the end. And in the meantime, we must live by faith, by faithfulness. We have to keep on believing and just remain faithful. That is a huge lesson that we gather as we work our way through this incredible book of Habakkuk. So look, it's similar to Jonah in that it is a struggle between the prophet and God. So this is an interesting book. All these books are so interesting. I mean, Amos was kind of like the traditional, you know, prophetic oracle, book of prophetic oracles. This hard-hitting, boom, 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 fire and brimstone. But, you know, then Hosea was different. You know, again, it was like this love story, this romance. They all have a certain vibe. Obadiah was pretty harsh. Nahum was kind of harsh. But then you have the book of Jonah. Jonah is like this narrative story. It's very unique, in the midst of the Bible. In the midst of the minor prophets, you have this narrative story that's really entertaining and enjoyable to read. Didn't really fit in. But what's interesting about Jonah and Habakkuk is they both are based on a personal struggle with God by the prophet. Jonah was in this dialogue with God throughout the book. Throughout the story, he's wrestling with God. He's dealing with God, and God is dealing with him. In this book of Habakkuk, it's very interesting because the first couple chapters here, it's like he launches these two complaints, levies or whatever, these two complaints the prophet does against God. And God responds to them. And that's pretty much chapter 1 and 2. And then the final chapter 3 is like this beautiful psalm where God is like the divine warrior. It's pretty cool. Now, I think we're ready to jump in. Grab your Bible, open it up to Habakkuk. Hurry up. This is nice. It's only 3 chapters, a couple pages. So once again, I'd like to just read the whole thing. So follow along with me. It's really enjoyable, these little books that we can read the whole thing and just soak in the language. And so Habakkuk launches his first complaint here in chapter 1. All right. The oracle of God, which Habakkuk the prophet saw. Once again, just like Nahum, had a vision, an oracle with a vision. The book of the vision of Nahum of Elkosh. Saw a vision. They're seers. And the oracle of God, which Habakkuk the prophet saw. It's an oracle that he saw. A visionary, a seer. Chapter 1, verse 2. O Lord, how long shall I cry for help and thou wilt not hear? So chapter 1, verses 2 to 4 basically is the first complaint that he's going to levy against God. How long? You hear that in the Psalm so much. How long, O Lord? Oh Lord, how long, how long, how long? O Lord, how long shall I cry for help and thou wilt not hear? Or cry to thee violence and thou wilt not save? Why dost thou make me see wrongs and look upon trouble? The problem of evil, the scandal of suffering. Destruction and violence are before me, strife and contention arise. So the law is slacked, and justice never goes forth. For the wicked surround the righteous, so justice goes forth perverted. Boy, we could read this in our time, couldn't we? Something timeless about these things. How long shall I cry for help and thou wilt not hear? So here's God's reply. Fasten your seatbelt here. Verse 5. Look among the nations and see. Wonder and be astounded. For I am doing a work in your days that you would not believe if told. For lo, I am rousing the Chaldeans. Another way of referring to the Babylonians. He's going to rouse them up. The Chaldeans. He's going to use them to punish Israel. He's going to use them to punish Judah, shall we say. Okay, the southern kingdom of Judah. A work that you're not going to believe. You're not going to believe this. I'm doing a work in your days that you would not believe if told. This is so unheard of that God's going to do something that no one would have expected. And, Isaiah says something interesting. We should look at this in Isaiah 26:9. I love this. First of all, let's just make this point in Isaiah. There's 3 passages I want to look at in Isaiah. Number 1, the logic behind this is the Lord's got to do something. He's got to make an invasion. He's got to do something to address this problem of our waywardness. And the problem is remedial suffering, that provides a remedy. He's going to chastise us like a son. Father disciplines his son. So we need to be chastised. Listen to this verse, chapter 26, verse 9 and 10 in the book of Isaiah. For when thy judgments are in the earth, the inhabitants of the world learn righteousness. Judgment, God's judgment, brings righteousness. If favor is shown to the wicked, he does not learn righteousness. If he's like Mr. Nice Guy all the time, Mr. Big Smiley Face in the Sky, Santa Claus, Barney the Purple Dinosaur, or whatever, that kind of God, we're not going to learn righteousness. So anyway, let's look at a couple other verses here. 48:10 is kind of similar in Isaiah. Let's hear that one. Yeah, behold, I have refined you. I have tried you in the furnace of affliction. Now, lastly, let's just look at chapter 13 of Isaiah and find out what is this willow branch that he's going to use on us when he takes us out behind the woodshed. It's going to be Babylon. So you read Isaiah chapter 13, the oracle concerning Babylon, which Isaiah the son of Amoz saw on a bare hill raise a signal. Wail, for the day of the Lord has come. Okay, this whole chapter here is, most of it here, is going to be about how God is going to use this nation. He's going to raise a signal and cry aloud to them, and he's going to use them. He's going to summon Babylon to bring about this chastisement of his people. They come from a distant land, from the ends of the heavens. The Lord and the weapons of his indignation. Wail, for the day of the Lord is near, as destruction from the Almighty it will come. God is doing this. He engineered it. He orchestrated it. He is the master of human history. That's pretty much this whole chapter. He's going to destroy sinners from the earth. I will punish the world for its evil and the wicked for their iniquity. And he's going to do it with this pagan nation. That is what is going to be so hard for Habakkuk to grasp here. He's going to have a real hard time accepting this. So, that bitter and hasty nation God refers to Babylon as, who march through the breadth of the earth or seize habitations not their own. Dread and terrible are they. Their justice and dignity proceed from themselves. That's an interesting statement. Their horses are swifter than leopards, more fierce than the evening wolves. Their horsemen press proudly on. Yeah, their horsemen come from afar. They fly like an eagle swift to devour. They all come for violence. Terror of them goes before them. They gather captives like sand. At kings they scoff, and of rulers they make sport. They laugh at every fortress, for they heap up earth and take it. Then they sweep by like the wind and go on. Guilty men whose own might is their God. Verse 12, art thou not from everlasting, O Lord my God, my Holy One? We shall not die, O Lord. Thou hast ordained them as a judgment, and thou, O Rock, hast established them for chastisement. Now, here comes Habakkuk's second complaint. He gets it. He gets it. Okay, I understand you're going to use this pagan nation, all right? And you've ordained them as a judgment for us. I got it. You've established that they're going to chastise us, O Rock. I like how he calls God a rock. Now let's listen to his second complaint in verse 13. Thou who art of purer eyes than to behold evil and canst not look on wrong. It's a good setup for his complaint here. Reminding God of his goodness and purity. Why dost thou look on faithless men and art silent when the wicked swallows up the man more righteous than he? Okay, so this is so interesting. How in the world can you use a people that are more wicked than us to punish us? But, they're going to be judged too. God's going to take care of Babylon. The rest of chapter 13 in Isaiah is about the fall of Babylon. Okay, so they're going to get what's coming to them. We know that. But it's a valid complaint here. And the rest of this is going to be an answer. And partly God's going to demonstrate, look, they're going to get cursed. They're going to call down this curse on themselves. They're going to be judged too. But in the meantime, I am using them. I'm getting some good. I'm writing straight with crooked lines here, to use the classic expression. God is so all-powerful. St. Augustine said that he can bring good even out of evil. Read the Catechism, paragraph 311 in the Catechism. This incredible statement by St. Augustine. He's going to allow this to happen, and he's going to bring great good from it. Verse 14. For thou makest men like the fish of the sea, like crawling things that have no ruler. He brings all of them up with a hook. He drags them out with his net. He gathers them in his seine, so he rejoices and exults. Therefore he sacrifices to his net and burns incense to his seine. For by them he lives in luxury and his food is rich. Is he then to keep on emptying his net and mercilessly slaying nations forever? Okay, now, chapter 2, again, is kind of Jonah-like, because he's like, all right, I want to take my stand and I want to watch. I'm going to stand up on the wall and watch this happening. I want to see them going down. All right, I will take my stand to watch and station myself on the tower and look forth to see what he will say to me and what I will answer concerning my complaint. And the Lord answered me, write the vision, make it plain upon tablets, so he may run who reads it. I like that expression. Just keep that in mind. Hold that. A word of encouragement written on these tablets. This vision. That is going to enable anybody who reads it to run. Get up and run. I mean, I take that in a positive sense, Make progress. Get going. Get on the way. Okay, run. Verse 3. For still the vision awaits its time. It hastens to the end. It will not lie. If it seems slow, wait for it. The darkness of faith, we just got to wait. How long, O Lord? How long? This is a powerful statement right here. If it seems slow, wait for it. There's nothing for it but to wait. We don't like to wait. So much of life is about waiting. I just want to jump into another Isaiah passage here. A lot of cross-referencing to Isaiah here. Isaiah 40:29. Listen to this. He gives power to the faint, and to him who has no might he increases strength. Even youths shall faint and be weary, and young men shall fall exhausted. But they who wait for the Lord shall renew their strength. They shall mount up with wings like eagles. They shall run and not be weary. They shall walk and not faint. I like that. They shall run and not be weary. What does he say here? The Lord says, write this vision, make it plain upon tablets, so he may run who reads it. This vision, if it seems slow, wait for it. It will surely come. It will not be delay. Verse 4, behold, he whose soul is not upright in him shall fail, but the righteous shall live by his faith. Now the Hebrew word is emunah, okay? And that's where we get the word amen. which is kind of like it is true, or so be it, or I stake my tent to this statement. Okay, it's true, so be it. It's really more, this word emunah in Hebrew is more, when it says the righteous shall live by his faith. I mean, Paul quotes this a couple times. It's found in Hebrews as well. Galatians 3:11, Romans 1:17, Hebrews 10:38 and 39. So it's used throughout, the righteous shall live by faith. And the word in Greek is pistis. So that's how the Septuagint translates this, and that's what Paul uses in the New Testament, this word faith. But the Hebrew word is pretty nuanced. So pistis is not perfect as a translation, because emunah is something like an ongoing state of faith. So really it's more like faithfulness. Faithfulness. We're not called to just make a one-time act of faith and then once saved, always saved, go up to the altar. Faith is an ongoing thing that has to be worked out in fear and trembling. So faithfulness might be a better way to translate this. The righteous shall live by his faithfulness. That's the essence of faith in our understanding of what faith is. It's a state, it's an ongoing thing that we must endure to the end. That is the one who will be saved. The one who endures to the end, who is faithful. Keeping faith, guarding faith, preserving what you have been taught, and handing it on to others. Pretty cool, huh? All right, now, the righteous shall live by his faith. Verse 5, moreover, wine is treacherous. The arrogant man shall not abide. His greed is as wide as Sheol. His death, he has never enough. Like death, he has never enough. That's so interesting. His greed is as wide as Sheol. Like death, he has never enough. Again, just the restlessness of wickedness and of hell, of Sheol. A place of total, where there's no rest, no satisfaction, no gratification, nothing, emptiness. His greed is as wide as Sheol. Like death, he has never enough. He gathers for himself all nations and collects as his own all peoples. All right, so here we go. Chapter 2, verse 6 to the end is going to be 5 woes. And don't say woe. Woe are you. Woe is you. Whenever you say woe, it's a curse. Really has the connotation of a curse. So chapter 2, verse 6, the 5 woes here. Shall not all these take up their taunt against him in scoffing derision of him, and say, woe to him who heaps up what is not his own, injustice? For how long? And loads himself with pledges. Will not your debtors suddenly arise, and those who awake, who will make you tremble? Then you will be booty for them, because you have plundered many nations. All the remnant of the people shall plunder you for the blood of man and violence to the earth, to cities and all who dwell therein. Verse 9, the second woe. Woe to him who gets evil gain for his house. This is like, there's a lot of bribery going on and stuff. To set his nest on high, to be safe from the reach of harm. You have devised shame to your house by cutting off many peoples. You have forfeited your life, for the stone will cry out from the wall, and the beam from the woodwork respond. Third woe, verse 12. Woe to him who builds a town with blood and founds a city on iniquity. Behold, is it not from the Lord of hosts that people labor only for fire, and nations weary themselves for naught? For the earth will be filled with the knowledge of the glory of the Lord as the waters cover the sea. That's like exactly the same. Verse 14, chapter 2, verse 14 in Habakkuk is like identical to Isaiah 11:9. Okay. The earth will be filled with the knowledge of the glory of the Lord as the waters cover the sea. Man, what a profound statement. Wow. I just wonder why that's inserted into the middle of all these woes. It just seems so out of place. You know? I mean, he's literally into the third woe, and then all of a sudden, this incredible statement. For the earth will be filled with the knowledge of the glory of the Lord as the waters cover the sea. I don't even understand why that's there, but it's beautiful. Fourth woe, verse 15. Woe to him who makes his neighbors drink of the cup of his wrath and makes them drunk to gaze on their shame. So this is, just moral depravity and self-indulgence. Immorality. You will be sated with contempt instead of glory. Drink yourself and stagger. Apparently they really like their liquor. They like to get liquored up there, all right, in Babylon. The cup in the Lord's right hand will come around to you, and shame will come upon your glory. The violence done to Lebanon will overwhelm you. The destruction of the beasts will terrify you. For the blood of man and violence to the earth, to cities and all who dwell therein. Verse 18. What profit is an idol when its maker has shaped it a metal image, a teacher of lies? For the workman trusts in his own creation when he makes dumb idols. I mean, it's just interesting. He's talking about immorality, and then he switches to idolatry because they're associated, ultimately. When we have inordinate desires and attachments to things, it's like a certain idolatry. Okay, fifth and final woe, verse 19. Woe to him who says to a wooden thing, awake, to a dumb stone, arise. Can this give revelation? Behold, it is overlaid with gold and silver, and there's no breath at all in it. Now, verse 20 is one of those zingers. But the Lord is in his holy temple. Let all the earth keep silence before him. The Lord is in his holy temple. Let all the earth keep silence before him. The awesomeness of that. And pray with that text. I could pray with that text. Spend some time contemplating the Lord in his holy temple and just keep silence before him. Our holy Lord in his holy temple. Chapter 3 now is this psalm that's similar to Psalm 68. Let's hear this psalm here now. A prayer of Habakkuk the prophet according to Shigionoth. Sorry. O Lord, I have heard the report of thee, and thy work, O Lord, do I fear. In the midst of the years, renew it. In the midst of the years, make it known. In wrath, remember mercy. Beautiful statement here. In wrath, remember mercy. God came from Teman, and the Holy One from Mount Paran. His glory covered the heavens, and the earth was full of his praise. His brightness was like the light rays flashed from his hand, and there he veiled his power. Before him went pestilence, and plague followed close behind. He stood and measured the earth. He looked and shook the nations. Then the eternal mountains were scattered. The everlasting hills sank low. His ways were of old. His ways were as of old. I saw the tents of Cushan in affliction. The curtains of the land of Midian did tremble. Was thy wrath against the rivers, O Lord? Was thy anger against the rivers, or thy indignation against the sea? When thou didst ride upon thy horses, upon thy chariot of victory. The Lord's chariot of victory. Love that. Verse 9, thou didst strip the sheath from thy bow and put the arrows to the string. Selah. Whenever you see that Selah in a psalm 1, 2, 3 times here, presumably that means like it's like rubrics calling for a prostration. Thou didst cleave the earth with rivers. The mountains saw thee and writhed. The raging waters swept on. The deep gave forth its voice. It lifted its hands on high. The sun and moon stood still in their habitation, at the light of thine arrows as they sped, at the flash of thy glittering spear. Thou didst bestride the earth in fury. Thou didst trample the nations in anger. Thou wentest forth for the salvation of thy people, for the salvation of thy anointed. Thou didst crush the head of the wicked, laying him bare from thigh to neck. Thou didst pierce with thy shafts the head of his warriors, who came like a whirlwind to scatter me, rejoicing as if to devour the poor in secret. Thou didst trample the sea with thy horses, the surging of mighty waters. I hear and my body trembles. My lips quiver at the sound. Rottenness enters my bones. My steps totter beneath me. I will quietly wait for the day of trouble to come upon people who invade us. I'll just wait until they get their comeuppance. I will quietly wait for the day of trouble to come upon people who invade us. They're going to get what's coming to them. I believe that now. I trust you, Lord, that you're going to take care of them. I listen to your woes, all 5 of your woes. God gave him this reassurance. Yes, I'm going to take these temporary measures right now, and I'm going to chastise my people with this wicked pagan nation. This is something, a work that you would not believe if told. I'm going to rouse these Chaldeans and use them as my instrument of affliction and chastisement to purify my people. But then I'm going to bring judgment on them eventually. I'll take care of them. Don't worry about that. So his second complaint, his first complaint is answered by God. You know, how long are we going to put up with this wickedness down here in the land? God says, I got a plan. All right, you're not going to believe what I'm going to do. I'm going to send this kingdom of Babylon down there to chastise y'all. All right, and frankly, it worked. It really did. They cleaned up their act quite a bit. There was a tremendous religious revival after that Babylonian captivity. It was effective. And then his second complaint is, how can you let this pagan nation come down here and trample your holy people? You know, that's just so wrong. He's like, look, I'm just, okay? Take the long view here. It's all going to come out in the wash in the end. I'm going to take care of all this and straighten everything out. You'll get your fair shake, and they're going to get their shake too. They're going to get shaken down by me. And he reassures poor Habakkuk, gives him a little hug and a little double tap. And now, this is beautiful here from verse 17 to the end of chapter 3. This incredible description of faith, okay, that we know Habakkuk's told us. The righteous shall live by faith. Or we should say, God is telling us through the prophet Habakkuk, the righteous shall live by his faithfulness. Look at this process Habakkuk's gone through. He's posing these questions. It's kind of like Jonah, you know, or Jacob wrestling with the man all night. You just see this, the whole story of Jacob. You know, it's just like he takes us all through a process. We kind of have to deal with the Lord, and he's dealing with us. Okay, and you see the process Habakkuk's going through here. And, you know, where you start to where you end, it's amazing in 3 short chapters. It's a very spiritual book, Habakkuk. I'm going to go ahead and read this now. But just keep in mind, the Babylonians had a scorched earth policy, man. They didn't play. They came in and just cleaned house, man. The Babylonians, they left nothing living in the land. I mean, they would chop down trees and stuff, kill all the animals. They just wiped the place out and burned it. Scorched earth policy. The Babylonians, ruthless. So listen to this state of spiritual abandonment to divine providence that Habakkuk is expressing now. This prophet, what a journey he's been on to get to this place of faith now, where he says, look, I will quietly wait. Remember the words of, let me see, in quietness and trust shall be your strength. In Isaiah, let's see, where is it? Yeah, in returning and rest you shall be saved. In quietness and in trust shall be your strength. Quietness and trust. That's something that this Habakkuk has understood. I will wait quietly for the day of trouble to come upon people who invade us. I know they're going to get it. I will just quietly wait for that day. Verse 17, though the fig tree do not blossom, nor fruit be on the vines, the produce of the olive fail, and the fields yield no food, the flock be cut off from the fold, and there be no herd in the stalls, yet I will rejoice in the Lord, I will joy in the God of my salvation. Isn't that incredible? So amazing. I don't care, Lord. I'm going to be so happy and I'm going to rejoice. I'm going to rejoice in the Lord, even if all these things are taken away from me. It's like the giving tree. Remember that famous little book, The Giving Tree? I don't care. Take it all away, Lord. This is a state of total spiritual abandonment to divine providence. And look, fig trees, I don't care. Though the fig trees do not blossom, fruit beyond the vines, no produce on the olive fail, the field yields no food, the flocks are cut off, no herd in the stalls. Yet I will rejoice in the Lord, I will joy in the God of my salvation. Very spiritual book. And lastly, the final verse of this great book of Habakkuk is something we've all heard before. I've never read that allegorical book, whatever that thing is. Somebody gave it to me on hinds on hind places or something like that. I can't remember the title of it, but it's based on this verse of Habakkuk, okay? Verse 19, God the Lord is my strength. He makes my feet like hinds' feet. He makes me tread upon my high places. When you have that in context of this entire book of Habakkuk in this historical moment, the imminent deportation of all these poor people, and eventually, a decade or so later, the total destruction of the temple and exile of so many people. Okay, you're facing that down at this moment of history for God's people. It's a very poignant moment. There's a lot of fear and panic and anxiety. He's seeing something dreadful about to happen. I mean, just imagine. Yeah, imagine if, the Nazis developed the atomic bomb before we did in World War II. And what if they nuked London? What if they nuked Washington, D.C.? And we sued for peace. And then I heard there's a TV show or something about this, a miniseries or something. Someone was just telling me about that. That kind of works from this scenario, fictional scenario, that Japan and Germany divided up the United States in half after the war. That we sued for peace because they got the atomic bomb. It's just like, imagine facing that down. You're a prophet and you're seeing a vision and you see that coming, and you know that there's going to be a Nazi flag hanging over the Capitol building and a big statue of Hitler in the middle of Washington, D.C. And, you're going to have SS goose-stepping through our nation's capital. And German tanks in battle formation, parading through the streets of our major cities. It's just so awful to imagine. But it could have happened. What if it did? Could we have this state of spiritual abandonment that I don't care what they do. I don't care if the fig trees don't blossom, nor fruit be on the vines, produce of the olive fail, fields yield no food, flock cut off, no herds in the stalls. Yet I will rejoice in the Lord. I will joy in the God of my salvation. God, the Lord, is my strength. He makes my feet like hinds' feet. He makes me tread upon my high places. Man, that is a place of real spiritual maturity here in this sweet little gem of a book. Next time, the book of the prophet Zephaniah. Till then, God bless you.